What's up guys, DK here with Collector's Impact, and today we're just going to have a nice candid discussion about the state of MetaZoo in the market here in March of 2022, right before the launch of Wilderness. So with Wilderness set to launch on March the 31st here, I figured that it's a good time to go ahead and take a look back at the recent history of MetaZoo, how the products are performing now versus then, and kind of see if we can get a good feel of how things are going and how they might be going into the near future, and come up with some predictions of how the next few months for MetaZoo are going to play out, and maybe even the next few years. Let's go ahead and throw in these Nightfall pins on the table just for good luck. Alright, so the first and most important benchmark really for the products for MetaZoo is probably the first edition Cryptid Nation booster boxes. In my opinion, it's not necessarily the Kickstarter, just because those are such a unique thing and they're so limited in production. The first edition booster boxes having 25,000 versus the 2,500 of the Kickstarter is more of a better baseline for like your average investor, collectors type of people who are going to have sealed product in their closets, kind of a situation. You're going to find more people with the first edition than you are with the Kickstarter. It's just how it is. So with that said, when first edition hit the scene, they were going for about $140 for the pre-orders and then the initial launch, and then that jumped up dramatically within a matter of weeks to $500, and they hovered around that $5 mark for a good month or two before going ahead and climbing to $6, $7, $8, $9, and then eventually ending out the calendar year 2021 at $1,000 peak price. Upon the launch of second edition, I was fully expecting a retracement, and we definitely did get that, and it's nice to see that we've had a good consolidation period. As you can see here, the average price of a first edition box today in March is around that $800 price point, which is actually pretty healthy, as it's been holding there decently for the last few months. The fact that it's held for such a decent time, it really does actually give a lot of hope in terms of the stability of the card game, at least for the short term. If it was going to crash and burn, it probably would have already done so. You know what I mean? So hopefully that will continue to be the case, that we'll see just either consolidation sideways or potentially get some upward momentum going forward for the first edition product. And of course, that's for several reasons. One key one being that the game is still clearly going. They're still releasing sets. They plan to release sets. There's a lot in the pipeline for this game. So the first edition box is probably the pinnacle of the investment category for the game, really. So that's just, if that starts to fall significantly, that's kind of the red flag that things are just not looking too hot. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Nightfall. So as of the filming of this video, the average first edition box of Nightfall is around $200 on the market, give or take 20 bucks here or there. So 200 bucks is where it's holding, which is pretty steady with where it's been since its launch, to tell you the truth. It's fluctuated between the 250 and the 180 mark, and kind of landed on 200 and consolidated there, which is very much what I expected for that product as well. I have an entire video explaining the difference between Cryptid Nation First Edition and Nightfall First Edition, and why there's such a disparity in the prices. If you'd like to check out that video, that's my theory, at least, of course, not financial advice, just having fun on YouTube. But still, if you're interested in that conversation, check the link in the description. But in a nutshell, it has to do with the rarity, the fact that they have non-foil versions of the Unlucky 13 from Nightfall within those booster packs, whereas the Cryptid Nation, they only have foil versions of the Obnoxious 9. That has a lot to do with it, as well as it having a larger print run too. There are other things too, but in a nutshell, those are the most important to me. I don't necessarily foresee Nightfall performing much stronger into the near future, though the long term, if the game continues to do well, Nightfall will of course do well right along with it, as it is the second set. And in the grand scheme of things, it probably was not printed that much in comparison to future sets that are going to be coming out. So for the second edition launch, The second edition boxes are still holding up right around the price point that they were after the launch and after all of the allocation was fulfilled, which is that like $90 to $100 price point, which is very much what I was expecting by this point, and I still expect that into the near future, the next 3 to 6 months. I would not necessarily expect second edition to go crazy. I just wouldn't. There's a lot more of them, and their presence in the market has overall decreased the value of the singles for the first edition and second edition cards alike, which is another thing that I was fully expecting just based on the fact that there's still not a whole lot of player base for this game or collector base. It's much more of a niche type of title, and therefore when the market gets inundated with more copies of cards, it's going to have an effect on the market in a downward way. Now, moving into the very present day here, when it comes to the pre-orders for Wilderness, it's a very different story than what we were seeing for Nightfall and Cryptid Nation. Though Cryptid Nation first edition was different because no one really knew about the product. So we'll just go with Nightfall. It's very different from the behavior that we were seeing in the market for Nightfall. Nightfall was at the peak of the hype, the peak of the MetaZoo storm, if you will, in the, October timeframe, in September-October timeframe of 2021. The demand for Nightfall was through the roof. You could not get a pre-order for that product. It was truly insane. And there were pre-orders of it going for like $300, $350 a box, which I very much did not pay those prices, and I'm glad, you know what I mean, because I figured that once the allocation was actually out there and the market had it, it would kind of quell some of that demand, and that's exactly what happened. So with Wilderness, we are seeing average pre-order prices of $115 a box, which is drastically different from Nightfall, as mentioned. That is caused by multiple factors, of course, which we'll actually get into a little bit later in the video. For now, let's just continue talking about the various product lines and all of that kind of stuff. So the next thing that I wanted to mention was that Topps is releasing, or has released actually, pre-orders for the Wilderness version of the Topps trading cards. So those, you can find them now on eBay and places for an average of $65 or so for the little box of those cards. The launch and execution of the Cryptid Nation ones was an absolute nightmare, to say the least. So I'm hoping that this launch goes a bit smoother, and it would be nice to actually make sure that these packs are not searchable and that kind of stuff. So we'll just have to see how this launch goes and how the market absorbs the cards and singles and whatnot. But it's interesting to see that the pre-orders for those are $65 versus when the Cryptid Nation one, with all the hype, it was like $200, and has now gone down, of course, significantly in light of the fact that they can be searched and the demand is just a bit lower. One thing that I wanted to mention, and this may be the one thing that people disagree with me on the most, and that would be the pin collection things for Cryptid Nation, Nightfall, and Wilderness. I personally did not order the Wilderness pins, and it wasn't because I didn't want them. It was because I just did not have the money at the time that they went up in the marketplace, and I made the decision not to use the credit card on it. But yeah, with that said, I guess that shows I didn't have strong drive to buy it. You know what I mean there? But yeah, that was the one thing that I didn't get. I'll probably pick some up in the secondary market. But aside from that rant, the actual pin card things, it still rubs me the wrong way to this day. By that I mean, this is supposed to be a trading card game, right? So you buy the booster packs, you open, you're trying to get rare cards, chase cards, the monsters, the cryptids that you want to have in your collection and stuff. This product line is undermining the actual booster boxes, in my opinion at least, because they choose some of the most popular cryptids from the set, from the expansion, and they put them in these pin sets and allow people to get not only the card itself and a really nice promo version of it, but a nice pin and everything to go with it. So it's cannibalizing its own product. That's just my opinion. So I'm wondering how they're going to do with these moving forward, in terms of if they're going to do any sort of course corrections on that, because it kind of takes away the chase factor of the cards in the actual booster boxes. For example, with Cryptid Nation, The big guy is the first edition Mothman, and you can get first edition Mothman pin version, and it's like $30 versus several hundred. So to me, that just doesn't make a lot of logical sense. But whatever, it is what it is. And there's a second edition Mothman as well too now, so that whole thing is getting quite diluted. But yeah, we'll just have to see how the market plays out for that, because obviously the print runs and the various factors that go into consideration of like the first edition Cryptid Nation card, it's always going to be worth more than the pin one or the second edition. It'll just always be the case. But I still think that it probably has an overall impact on the market and will continue to do so, especially as cards like that continue to get reprints into the future. So going back to the Wilderness pre-order prices and whatnot, I actually do think that the pin products for Wilderness probably have a little bit to do with that, because you could buy the pin box for around the same price as a booster box, and you're going to get like some of the best cryptids in the set, along with cool pins, and it's just going to have a decent value in that product, and it could take away a little bit from the actual booster box. That's just my opinion there. Again, there's lots of other factors, the demand as well as the hype train going down. There's also a lot of external factors, let's be real. Right now is a time of extreme uncertainty. There's a lot of geopolitical things happening around the world. There's a lot of inflation around the world, and a lot of just unstable markets and fear in the markets and that kind of stuff that are impacting hobbies and luxury things like this quite significantly. So who's to say what these products would be doing if there wasn't all of the craziness that's going on? You know what I mean? If the world was a bit more normal, like people were hoping that it would be by 2022, things die down with the viral situation and that kind of stuff, and life starts going back to normal. But no, here you go, kicking up more stuff, more dirt in the face. It's just there's a bit of fatigue out there for current events and craziness, and I think that just the general fear and uncertainty is also impacting this product. Not to mention, there's a lot of stiff competition now in terms of Kickstarter types of things, which I know you guys know about. It's insane the amount of Kickstarter games that are coming out. So if you made it this far into the video, I'll go ahead and share with you that I actually did go ahead and back 2 Kickstarter projects. I haven't made any videos on them yet. I probably will in the future, especially when they come in. I'll do box openings, but I chose to back Nostalgics as well as Sorcery. And I got to be honest, for 2 main reasons. 1 being the hype, and 2 being the association of those products with other famous influencers. I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to this hobby and or investing aspect of things, those types of things I consider much more on the speculative side of the investment side of collectibles. And therefore, since they had hype, they've both reached over $1 million in backers. There's a lot of hype around the products. And there's a lot of big names behind them, like Rudy from Alpha Investments is behind Sorcery. And it's just, those types of things go into the decision-making process for which project I was personally going to get involved with a little bit. And I do mean a little bit. I only got like a case of one and then half a case of the other. So I didn't go ham, you know what I mean? I went moderately decent for just taking a chance. But anyway, back to MetaZoo. So the last thing that I want to go ahead and touch on here are the graded card market, because the graded cards are definitely an interesting component to the MetaZoo stuff, and we've seen some very high prices for graded cards in the past, so I just wanted to go over some of the most recent sales and kind of discuss them a little bit. So very recently there was a PSA 10 first edition Mothman from Cryptid Nation, the non-Kickstarter, just the regular first edition, that sold in a PSA 10 for $650. That's still a very decent price for this point in the product's life cycle with all of the factors to consider. I have to say that's honestly a very decent price. I would have expected it to be more around the $500 to $400 range by now, but $650, hey, that's great. More power to them. With that said, when you look at some of the other less desired cards, Mothman is like the Charizard essentially. So all of the less desired cards, there's a lot of best offers accepted at decently low price points anyway, considering that the grading fees on these cards, you're looking at $100 minimum on average to grade a MetaZoo card from PSA at the current time. So you have to factor that into the price as well. So there's a lot of prices accepted where they were like looking for $300, say, for Bigfoot, but then the price got accepted lower. And of course, eBay doesn't tell you what it is. There are ways to find out. You can assume that it went for 200, 250, somewhere in that neighborhood instead of 300. So there's a lot of examples like that. One thing that stuck out in the sales history that I was looking at was this test card, this MetaZoo sample card, Fountain of Youth, that sold for $50,000 on record. That is one where I personally I don't believe it, because there's a lot of instances on eBay where things like that will, people will like hit buy it now or win an auction and then not pay, and then the record still gets recorded on eBay as being sold and it shows as green in the completed listings. It's a whole thing, and I personally don't trust it until I see more evidence of that. So that's just my 2 cents. You guys, let me know what you think about that. But I'm just weary of that particular statistic. It's such an outlier, But things like the Loveland Frogman for $300 with a slash through it, best offer accepted, that kind of stands out to me. That's a pretty popular card, as well as Sam Sinclair for $250 with a slash through it. So they got even less than that for a PSA 10 Sam Sinclair in first edition. That is a little bit weaker to me, as just the single card by itself when the product was super hot. The single card by itself in non-PSA condition was going for $100 for the first edition Sam Sinclair. So it's interesting to see this change in the overall graded market. So basically, in a nutshell, the top cards that are the most popular are still holding their value. Anything else seems to be suffering quite a bit with the current market pullback. And honestly, once PSA fully reopens, if they ever do, right now they're doing that queue system, which, side rant, that queue system sucks. I have tried so many times to get an allocation and I just can't. I don't know if you guys are having better luck with it, but that system sucks. Anyway, when they reopen and actually get cards submitted at like $50 or less per card, that will probably have an overall impact on the MetaZoo market as well, because there's going to be a lot more cards that are sent in and a lot bigger population reports for a lot of the regular cards. So I personally would expect even more declines in the graded card pricing going into the future when that factor is actually accounted for. Until then, this is probably what we're going to be seeing for that foreseeable future until that other variable comes into play. My overall thought on this product is that we are in the phase where it's getting interesting, to say the least. We're going to see how the market continues to evolve with it. I mean, there is product in Walmart, so that is a thing, though I've tried personally looking for it quite a bit. One of my friends was able to get one of the boxes, one of the little promo boxes, but I still have not been able to find one in my local Walmart. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, you know what I mean? I feel like it needs more visibility than it has, and when it's empty on the shelf, that means people are buying it, which is great, but are they buying it to put it on eBay and sell it at a higher price, or are they buying it because their kid says, "Ooh, look, that's cool, I want it"? You know what I mean? That's a pretty big difference, and it'll just be interesting to see how that shakes out as the product becomes more available on the Walmart shelves, and we'll see how the market truly reacts to it when it's not as popular and people aren't picking them up for other purposes other than to just collect and play. That will determine a lot when that actually happens. So yeah, we're kind of in the middle of the road section for this game, where if things continue to go at this pace, it's good. It means the game is going at a healthy pace. It's not overhyped. It's not overblown. But if they continue to fall off more and more and more, then we're going to be losing the momentum that was gained in it, and it will probably just stay stagnant for a little while until market conditions change. And we'll keep going with updates and whatnot on the MetaZoo situation and how things continue to unfold into the future. But for now, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So let me know what you guys think. How are you guys feeling about the MetaZoo Wilderness launch coming up, and MetaZoo as a whole? I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys have to say about this, as it's quite an interesting thing to ponder on. Well, that wraps up the video for today, guys. Thank you very much for coming by and checking out this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. And of course, if you are one of my current subscribers, thank you very much for coming back and checking out this video. And I look forward to seeing you all back here in the future. Thanks again, guys. Take care.